Democrats. And to sit here and say that you've done nothing wrong or nothing outside of the line, and your response was I believe, you've done nothing that would be illegal. Really? Really, Bill Clinton? You've done nothing that would be illegal? That's not the answer that these people deserve. That's not the answer I deserve. You're my commissioner. Right now, I'm paying your salary. That's not the answer that I expect from the politicians. Again, under me, this will not be an issue because I will not shake down the attorneys.
Mr. Morrison keeps on referring to shaking down attorneys.
Right, well, let Commissioner Patlak, I know this is like I said, a point of some contention, so let Commissioner Patlak respond and then we'll move on unless there's new information brought to light here.
Yeah, Mr. Morrison talks about shaking down attorneys. I haven't actually heard him say he will never solicit an attorney who practices at the board for a contribution, which he's already done by his own admission. Now, in his case, it was an invitation to a fundraising event for $25 where it also mentioned that sponsorships being available. So he already has solicited attorneys for contributions. At this point, he's aware that most of them aren't going to be willing to make a large contribution, so he hasn't asked for a large contribution. But I haven't heard him say he won't ask for any contributions at all because he already has. And as far as Maureen Murphy being a fighter, he's right. Maureen Murphy was a fighter, and she stood up for the little guy, and she did a great job at the Board of Review. But by his characterization of me, he's saying the same thing about Maureen. And he says he's not aware of any contributions, and he doubts that what I'm saying has any veracity, but all he would have to do is check with the State Board of Elections records, which are online, and he can see in the 8 years that Maureen was in office, she solicited contributions on a regular basis and received them from attorneys who practice at the board. And yet he says he's going to model himself after her. And by the way, he supported her candidacy in 2006 with a $4,000 contribution. And at that time, evidently he had no qualms about the contributions that Maureen was receiving. But now that he's running for this office, and I'm doing the same thing that Maureen was doing, now he considers it a sin.
Moving on, just hold your powder.
Oh, you wanted excitement.
I know it's fine. This is what the primaries are for. Let's get everything out and cathartic. But another issue that has been a point of contention, again in the correspondence back and forth, I think we just flesh this all out and have you guys respond to it, and then people can make their own assessments. But is the question about who's an authentic Republican in this race? There have been allegations that Mr. Morrison, you have voted in Democrat primaries, you've supported Democrats, and maybe that you're not a quote-unquote real Republican, and I wonder if you would address those allegations that have been made.
Absolutely will, and I just want to really quick, I'll take 30 seconds to answer your previous one. First of all, Dan, the fact that you don't get it, I'm not an attorney. I don't appear before the board. Maureen Murphy was a friend of mine from my neighborhood, and she was a good, honest, political person, and I supported her. I'm not an attorney. I don't appear before a board. See? You don't even get that, Dan. That's sad. Secondary. I said you're disingenuous because, quite frankly, you're lying to these folks right now by saying that anywhere on my letter to invite people to my meet and greet was there a sponsorship available. 100% lie. It will be on my website tomorrow. Everybody log on. Sean Morrison, GOP. You'll see it. And then you will see then when you read it that Mr. Patlak is a liar. Now, your other previous question was if there's anything to prove it. If anybody here has ever tried to get records from the Board of Review without a FOIA system, it's like pulling teeth. Anybody, go ahead and try and pull a record. Try and pull a record from such and such law firm for such and such piece of property. Just call them up and ask them for it and see if they'll mail it to you. Maybe if you call Dan tomorrow to prove me wrong, he'll do it. But guess what? That's not the way the board operates. They'll keep you in red tape for a long time.
And now to my question.
Now to your question, which was, go ahead down one more time.
The allegations about your past support and of Democrats or past voting in Democrat primaries.
Yeah. In the last election when I ran against Dan, and Dan narrowly won to his credit, he had one campaign issue against me last time, and that was simply that Sean Morrison is a 19th Ward Democrat. Sean Morrison is a Democrat. He blogosphered, he put mailers out, he put everything else, and I'm a Democrat. Well, that was the angle and the tact that Dan took. It was disingenuous, and it was wrong then, and it's wrong now. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the 19th Ward. If Jim Perley was here, the current 19th Ward Commissioner, he would tell you there are no quantitative, viable offices to run for in a Republican. There's not. So what did I do for a course of 15 years? I chose the most conservative, the most fiscally conservative, the most value-minded conservative. And what is that to me? That believes in small government. That believes in family values. That believes in low taxation. That to me is what a conservative is. I tried to select the best I could. He makes the statement that I made, donation. It was an aldermanic race. The aldermanic race is a nonpartisan race. I knew the gentleman, an attorney, John Somerville, who was running against Virginia Rugai, the then 20-year or so alderman, and also the Cook County Democratic Committee person for that ward. We tried to replace her from her seat. That's what he points to. That's what they pointed to as evidence. If you take a small enough lie and you make it big enough, people will believe it. That's my response to that, Dan. As far as who I am and am I a Republican, if you also look forward in that, you'll see, am I a Republican? 12 years. I've donated thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, both locally and federally. I'm an NRCC member since 2003. I'm on the NRCC Business Advisory Board. I was a presidential delegate in 2008. I won the Ronald Reagan Award. I donated to the Reagan Presidential Library. These are all facts. They're all verifiable. Anybody wants to look and see them, they can go and look and see them. It's all true.
All right. Commissioner Pat, we're going to open it up to audience questions after Commissioner Patlak has a chance to respond, if you care to.
I think the charge that Mr. Morrison was a Democrat in the last election was not the only campaign issue. The main campaign issue really was that Mr. Morrison was completely unqualified for the position of the Board of Review. Mr. Morrison never took any interest in tax issues. He's never done anything for taxpayers. He never had any interest in the Board of Review beyond perhaps supporting Maureen Murphy for re-election. It is true that we pointed out his record. The fact is that until he ran for the Board of Review as a Republican in 2010, he never took a Republican primary ballot his entire life. Now he claims that there was no one in the 19th Ward to vote for, but don't forget, there were candidates that ran statewide. There were contested primary races. Back in 1996, you had Bob Custer versus Al Salvi running for the U.S. Senate. The following year, you had Peter Fitzgerald versus Lolita Diedrichson running for the U.S. Senate. In 2002, you had Pat O'Malley versus Jim Ryan running for governor. So there were plenty of opportunities to cast a vote that would matter for a Republican if you had the guts to take a Republican ballot while living in the 19th Ward. Mr. Morrison says that he made contributions to Mr. Somerville for alderman, which is true. He forgets to tell you that he made several contributions to the 19th Ward Democratic Organization. He made one as recently as 3 or 4 months prior to his getting into the race as a Republican for the Cook County Board of Review. So I think that should give some people pause as to why he's now running and why he ran before as a Republican when he spent his life as a Democrat.
Let's go to the audience, Veronica.
My question is for you, Mr. Morrison. This is regarding what we were talking about just a little bit ago. I just wanted to get a little bit more specificity in what was said. I know that you were saying that you would not shake down attorneys for contributions. And this is in 2 parts. First off, in terms of shaking down attorneys for contributions, do you mean that you will not accept any contributions from attorneys? Because if somebody wants to contribute to you, that's an attorney, will you say, no, I'm not going to accept contributions, particularly in large numbers, from attorneys? Or I want you to be a little bit more specific with your shakedown phrase. And secondly, what other groups are you committing to right now not accepting any contributions from?
Well, to be clear, I'll say it again. When I say shake down, I mean exactly that. I won't shake down. What is a shakedown?
What will you accept?
I'll get to that. What is a shakedown? If I'm a practicing property tax firm that specializes in predominantly property taxes, the appealing of them, the lowering of them, and I appear before a commissioner, and that commissioner sends me a invitation directly to me, to my firm, and then to me as an individual attorney by name, asking me for a $5,000 donation, that's a shakedown. That's intimidation.
That's actually just a
Just let him finish.
Well, the semantics, it's not going to be effective for me to go back and forth with you. You asked what my definition was, and I just provided that to you.
But just to be clear, even if it was unsolicited, will you take a contribution, is this a potentially a point of departure between the two? Will you take any contributions from firms or attorneys that would practice before the board?
I would say nothing more than probably $250 maximum would be reasonable.
That's
to me,
your
that would indicate good governance. Anything above that screams to me of asking for favoritism.
The second part. Got the second part.
And
What other groups are you committing to not taking any contributions from?
Are there any other groups?
Other groups at the time, nothing comes to my mind.
Contributions from anybody else?
Okay. Hold on a second.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, that's so broad spectrum. If you have an individual thought pattern in mind, you can ask and I'll answer it.
Okay. Dan, you want to respond to that?
Just to clarify one thing, the invitation to a fundraising event that I sent out that Sean has looked at, the ordinary request for contribution for the fundraising events is $250. There are then opportunities listed on the fundraising invitation to be a bronze or a silver or a gold or a platinum sponsor, and the platinum sponsor is $5,000. In fact, no one actually responded to the $5,000 platinum sponsor, but I just want to make that clear to everyone.
I'm getting the high sign here, but before I let you guys go, 30 seconds both each. I mean 30 seconds. No. That's why I said this is the last question. And so let's end on a positive note. I know there's some points of contention here, and that's fine. But just kind of real generally speaking, or kind of from a first principle perspective, why are you both running for this office? Why are you running?
I'm running because I feel I can do a better job. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm a business person. I've spent the last 21 years developing businesses, selling businesses, employing people. I employ over 1,000 people across the country, providing meaningful jobs for them. That's teachers, that's off-duty firemen and policemen and regular people just like your neighbors. Those are meaningful jobs in the economy. And there we go. Okay. I'm running because I feel I can do a better job. Right now, the Board of Review is nothing more, in my opinion, than a nest of potential corruption. It's inefficient, it's not being run properly, and frankly, I can do a better job. Secondary to that, we're going to go into a general election, and the Democrats are squarely going to aim to retake this seat from us. Unfortunately, for part of the reasons, there's others, part of the reasons that I just spelled out here, Mr. Patlak is going to have a very difficult time winning a general election. If I'm talking about these, I can guarantee you the adversaries are going to be talking about these. It's very, very important that we nominate a person that has electability in a general election. It's something that everybody needs to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan.
One thing I'll agree with Mr. Morrison on is that it is important that we nominate someone with electability. So when the voters have an opportunity to choose between two candidates, I think it's desirable for the voters to have someone to vote for who's actually qualified for the office. Someone who's been a real estate broker for the past 25 years. Someone who's worked at the Board of Review for 8 years as an analyst. Someone who is a certified Illinois assessing officer. Someone who's been at the Board of Review as a leader, implementing changes to make the Board of Review a better place and more fair for taxpayers. Mr. Morrison can't claim any of those things, but I can, and I will be the better candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them both a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you guys.